So I declare the meeting open and welcome everyone. We're a little bit late, but Zoom does that to us sometimes, I believe.
421.
421. So Council acknowledges the Wadawurrung traditional owners of this land, and I pay my respects to all elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. Now, because it's Zoom, I have a virtual meeting statement that I'm obliged to read, so bear with me. Committee members are advised that this virtual meeting is being recorded and will be published on Council's website. If any committee member loses connectivity with this meeting, they will be marked as absent for the time they are away. If a quorum cannot be maintained during the meeting due to members losing connectivity, we'll adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes to re-establish a quorum. If a quorum cannot be achieved, the meeting will be abandoned and postponed until next Monday, the 25th of May at 4 p.m. Voting will be by a show of hands. Also, to speak to an item, please raise your hand. We ask you to keep your mic muted when you are not speaking to limit any background noise. As per the requirement of COVID-19 Omnibus Bill 2020, Part 12, Clause 394, can I please have a show of hands from everybody that you can both see and hear myself and the other committee members? I will then confirm we have a quorum. Now on my, Sharon, if you can hear me, on my screen I can't see Bruce or Ron or Brett.
Can you just confirm for me, Peter, in the top right corner, it should say speaker view, not presenter view?
Not in my top right corner, no. An arrow. Okay, I've got two splits there. So I've got Ron, Brett, Julie, Robin.
So up in the top where you can go gallery view, Peter.
Oh yeah.
And then everybody should come on then.
Oh wow. Righto.
Heart stopped.
Yeah. Well, that's better. That's better to work with. So we call for apologies, and I think we've got Dean. Is the only one? That's right.
Yes. Dean Anglin.
Dean Anglin. So if any declarations of interest, I'll call for those now. And if they, looks like Lee's talking.
A declaration of interest for me, though I don't think it's necessarily relevant given it's a post-event report, is that obviously RGYC is one of my clients.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Lee. If it does occur, at the appropriate time, you'll be placed in a virtual waiting room whilst the item is discussed. All right, so the first thing on the agenda is the election of chair. So I declare the positions of chair and deputy chair vacant and hand over to the executive officer to facilitate the election of chair and deputy chair for the period May 2020 to September 2020. Sharon.
Thank you, Councillor Marahi. For the position of Chair, Geelong Major Events Committee, we received one nomination, being Councillor Peter Marahi. Therefore, I declare Councillor Marahi as appointed to the role of GME Chair for the period May 2020 to September 2020. For the position of Deputy Chair, Geelong Major Events Committee, we only received one nomination again, being Councillor Trent Sullivan. Therefore, I can declare Councillor Sullivan as appointed to the role of Deputy Chair, GME, or Geelong Major Events, for the period May 2020 to September 2020.
Congratulations, gents.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you.
Well done.
Like that, Robin. Thanks very much. All right. And Trent, you're on mute. All right, we'll continue on. So item 4 is the confirmation of the minutes from the March ordinary meeting, 16th of March. Any matters arising from that, Sharon?
Nil.
Right, so I need a mover and a seconder for the confirmation of those minutes. Moved Russell, seconded Robin. All in favour? Thank you. Any correspondence for noting, Sharon?
Neil.
6 says question time, but we won't have any of those.
We did, in the public announcement for the meeting that goes in the Geelong Advertiser and on the web, we did provide the public with the opportunity to provide questions via email submission. We didn't receive any.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll move straight on to section B, reports and the budget update. Now, we've provided in the pack the...
you take your phone, please. Where are you going?
Tim? Was that you, Tim? He's got that voice you can easily identify. So do you want to run through that summary of that, Sharon?
Sure. Thank you. So the Geelong Major Events budget has been updated to reflect the proposed adjustments due to the COVID-19 related event postponements and cancellations. And we seek GME approval to implement these budget adjustments. There were 4 events which were cancelled during the weekend or in the days leading up to their event. It's been demonstrated by their post-event reports, which are on this agenda, that the majority of their expenditure had already been incurred. However, most of their income was not generated because they were unable to fully deliver their events. In addition, a considerable amount of the ROI benefits, the return on investment benefits to the city, was still generated both financially and reputationally by these events, which were cancelled within hours or days of the event commencement. It is therefore recommended that these events retain their GME sponsorship for 2020. We are also recommending that the Geelong After Dark event retains its sponsorship due to the advanced planning that is undertaken for that event and the commitment of expenditure by the event organiser through commissioning of installations and programming for the event. The Victorian Teachers' Games are also considering a postponement to 2021 if the 2020 event has to be cancelled due to restrictions on activities. So they are seeking in principle approval that their funding can be postponed to 2021. All other currently funded GME supported events for the remainder of 2020 have advised of either a postponement to a future date or a cancellation of that event for 2020. As you would be aware, there are a couple of major events which have been supported previously, but are currently not within the budget framework, and they have been those applications have been suspended pending a decision by GME. Those events will be presented to the committee at a later date when the mass gathering conditions for the last quarter of this year are better known. So in summary, the adjustments are as follows to the budget: that Geelong Tennis International, Head of the Schoolgirls Regatta, Geelong Highland Gathering and the Laser Masters World Championships retain sponsorship, that the NBL 3x3 Hustle event move to the 2021 budget, the Geelong After Dark retain its sponsorship, that Ronin Geelong at Geelong Gallery move to the 2021 budget, that the National Celtic Festival commence their 3-year agreement in 2021 instead of in 2020 as their event has been cancelled, that the Australian Open Table Tennis Championships forfeit their sponsorship as they have cancelled their event, but they are unable to postpone their event or to deliver it at a later stage, or future events in the coming years for table tennis have already been pre-allocated to other places. Gymnastics Championship Series, there's no change to the budget required because those events will be moved within the same financial year as they were already allocated. Victorian Teachers' Games, as we suggested, may require to move to the 21-22 budget if the event is postponed to September 2021. The Australian Croatian soccer tournament was cancelled. The organiser is bidding for the 2021 event, and so we propose to move the sponsorship as a bid commitment for the 2021-2022 budget. and the Blackball World Championships unfortunately announced they were unable to continue. Once again, the 2021 World Championships have already been allocated, so at this stage they're forfeiting their sponsorship. If we should be able to secure that event in the future, it would be a couple of years away, and a new application would come back to the committee. So the recommendation is that Geelong Major Events approve those budget adjustments as recommended in response to the impacts to GME supported major events from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thanks, Sharon. Any comments, any questions for Sharon in relation to that? Julie.
I'm in agreement with most of those. Just my only one question is over Geelong After Dark, given that it's already an event that's funded by the City of Greater Geelong. Is it necessary that we still provide them with that, or would that be able to be withstood within the city's budget, existing budget?
Sharon?
I'm not able to answer that question. Can I refer it to Brett Luxford?
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Thanks, Sharon. I think, as highlighted, a number of Long After Dark, a lot of it incurred by artists undertaking installations or getting the installations prepared. I'm not sure what had budget, whether there is a need from and I think perhaps need to take that one on note. I mean, if the committee was in line to not support that one, we would have to look at the options within the arts and culture budget for that one. So I can't answer it definitively, unfortunately, Julie, because I'm not sure whether what had been spent and what had been committed to date through that event.
Look, sorry, I was just going to say, it's really been really difficult, and Robin would know better than anybody about the stuff for the arts people, and it may be that
absolutely
gone so far, and that to actually do that would make that even more worse. And if that's the case, then let's go ahead and still do it. If that's what everyone's quite happy with, I'm happy to go along with it. But I was just asking that question for clarification, given that it is an existing City of Greater Geelong event.
Yeah, and I think that the funding had been sought to from GME because of it's considered a major event. It brings people in, and the complete budget that's provided for council doesn't cover the full cost. So that's why we think why it's been coming to GME for additional funding.
Okay.
Are you happy with that, Julie?
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, it was just to clarify because an existing city.
Yep. Robin.
Since I have been referred to, it would be excellent if we could encourage that money to go to the artists, to actually pay the artists and not get sort of sucked down a bit of a rabbit hole in other production costs, or I don't know exactly. I haven't looked at their budget in detail, but yeah, the artists are the ones that are really hurting, and they're the people we'd like to support. Yeah, and definitely through you, Peter, Robin, that's something that we were cognizant of. That event was an event that we strongly supported the artists, and where they'd had committed significant financially, we were looking to make sure the payment was made to them. Yeah. So it was going to the artists, it wasn't going to anything else. Great, good to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. If there's nothing else, well, the recommendation is there that the Geelong Major Events approves the budget adjustments recommended in response to the impacts to GME supported major events from the COVID-19 pandemic. I need a mover and a seconder for that.
I'm happy to move it.
Moved Brett and seconded Lee. All in favour? Thank you. The funding evaluations, Sharon. Yeah, I think, look, there's a possibility we could move these en masse, but I just want Sharon just to take a 30 seconds to a minute just to run through each one. Sharon, are you okay with that?
Of course.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. 2019-2020 T20 Big Bash League Melbourne Renegades matches at GMHBA Stadium. Excuse me. It's 2019-2020 because we had two matches, one on the Thursday 19th of December, and another on Tuesday 7th of January. Previous visits by the Melbourne Renegades, BBL competition that was held here had seen double headers, where we had the women's game in the afternoon and then followed with the men's games. This year, or last season, I guess it was, the BBL changed their structure and the women's WBBL was played first, and then it followed with the men's BBL. Hence, we only had single header matches. The spectator numbers were lower than the previous years, with a total of just under 20,000 spectators across the two matches. That one was about 8,000 and the other one was 11,000 odd across the two matches. We have obviously cricket and return to national sport is unknown given the COVID situation, so we haven't had any discussions at this stage about the T20 or the BBL returning to Geelong this summer. So we'll wait to hear further about that as time draws on.
Question for me, Sharon. The two matches, last season, there was one before Christmas, one after Christmas, before New Year and after New Year. The previous, I think they were both in January, which might be. Do we get any do we have any input or choice as to when our matches may be?
No, we don't. Well, when I say no, we don't. By the time that the discussions have been undertaken with us, those dates have already been predetermined. It may have been that they'd had discussion with the stadium in relation to their availability and determined those dates with them. So Geelong may have had a say, but we as council weren't part of those discussions.
Yeah, I just wonder going further whether we should be as GME contribution, whether we might be better off having both, if we're going to have two matches, have them both in January, because it seems the attendances are up in January as opposed to one pre-Christmas.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Russell?
I'll unmute you, Russell.
Yeah, I've got it here. We won't really know what's going on until we get back to international sport, because the World Cup will have a bearing on that, Peter.
Yes.
The World Cup will have an enormous bearing on what happens with the Big Bash.
Yes, true.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
but if we're asked and we offer some thoughts on it,
I agree. I agree with that point, that we should have some input to try to maximise the crowd.
Yeah, agree. Bruce?
Yeah, I think with the Big Bash, I think its funding ratio is around, I think it's 33, which is it's not great, but it's not bad. The fact that we allocate $50,000 and we get 20,000 people come through the gates, and the other thing is, we're supporting the use of Community Park, GMHBA Stadium, I think also is a factor you have to consider in the discussion. But they're just my thoughts. And obviously cricket being a very popular sport in and around the region, I'm comfortable with the current funding, but yeah, you'd like to see a few more people come through the gate. But again, it's probably something that we'll have to deal with in the future.
Ron?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, that was certainly the conversations I had with the Renegades people that day, that the first day that I was there, that they would rather have it in January when the people from Melbourne and wherever else they come from come down to our region, they can come to our games. So that was what they were feeling as well.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, it was a week and a half or 2 weeks before Christmas last year. There's a match, but it's left for the locals and not so much for the travellers. And it'd be ideal if they were both in January. Anyway, I think we've made that point. Sharon.
Okay.
Festival sales.
Sorry. Item 9, Festival Sales. Thank you. Festival of Sales held its 177th regatta in 2020. The event continued on the Australia Day weekend. It attracted 286 boats and just over 2,000 competitors with multiple days racing, including an Australian Championships. There was some uniqueness to Festival of Sales this year, and certainly that was that there were 2 World Championships on either side of the event. And there was, in addition to that, a number of Australia and Oceania Championships. So it was definitely a summer of sailing on the waterfront, and with the earliest sailors arriving from New Zealand. There was a World Championships in New Zealand in December, and many of the participants for the World Championships that were held here or intended to be held here in March came in December, rather than going back to wherever their country of origin. So they had great numbers for participation and competitors right across their event. The Australia Day celebrations were slightly different this year. Normally they would be celebrated with fireworks. Those fireworks were cancelled in acknowledgement of the catastrophic bushfires that we were going through at that time, and the yacht club pulled together a nighttime water skiing display as an alternate to that. The Cadell Evans Great Ocean Road Race was the weekend after, and so there was no clash of events this year in 2020. So that is a bit of a wrap up.
No worries. We'll carry on. I think we'll continue. The golf, Vic Open.
Yep, the Victorian Open golf continued to deliver great results. It was the 8th year of the event at the 13th Beach Golf Links. As everybody is aware, one of the first events in the world, and still one of the few events in the world that the men and the women play together on the same course, at playing simultaneously, and more importantly for equal prize money over the 72-hole stroke play. The event also held some pre-qualifying event, slightly different structure this year. There was a championship pro-am on the Wednesday, and an event for disability was played on the Tuesday, which was great to see, and a lot of connection with through the junior participation program with schools, golf clinics, etc. The event indicated they attracted over 22,600 spectators across the 4 days, which was great. And the event had some live broadcast on TV in addition to live streaming around the world. The ABC did a 17-hour live broadcast, which was simulcast through Fox Sports as well, and then distributed through the LGPA and the European Tour media channels. Yep. So every year that event has managed to bring an additional element, and this year was certainly the extension of that live broadcast.
So, and I think, I don't know if I've read it there, but the SEN, they did their afternoon show from there on a couple of those afternoons as well.
They did. They did a live broadcast for 2 days. Yes.
Yeah. And I just see the Barwon Heads Football Club, $23,000 from the parking, which is fantastic for them.
Wow.
Yeah. They do a great job. Russell.
Just at the live telecast, I would suggest to you was probably better than actually being on the course watching it. You know, I did both of them. The Saturday being on the course, and the Sunday I saw all the live telecast. And what, you know, the City of Greater Geelong got out of the live telecast was fantastic. And the branding that the City of Greater Geelong got out of the live telecast, and it was more what the commentators were saying about Geelong and the region, which was important. Now, because of the virus, we're probably not going to get the spin-off this year, but I think we get the same sort of thing again. The spin-off for the whole region in the long term will be excellent.
Absolutely. Brett, you had a question?
I was just probably more a further comment to what Russell was saying. So that stat, Sharon, around the broadcast was shown in 144 territories in excess of 600 million households is full on. It's amazing. In terms of does that include the Australian network productions, or is that just the international broadcast? It's just showing the magnitude of it, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to drill deeper into the media report. I can get that information for you.
Great.
I'm sure there's a more detailed information on it in their post-event report. I just don't have it at hand.
Fantastic. But yeah, just echo Russell's sentiments around the broadcast and the effect that that has on our region internationally.
Very good. Okay. Sorry, Brett Luxford.
Thanks, Peter. Sharon, I just wonder how we value that, how we demonstrate the value of that coverage in the ROI or the ratios.
That's a good point. We can do it two ways. How do we, or how can we? How can we?
Well, well, perhaps how can we? Because if you look at the funding ratio of 23, which is probably lower than what we would necessarily consider for most events, but then when you factor in the significant coverage, live coverage, international coverage, you know, that figure's not quite right.
Sure, we can do two things. One is we take, where we get broadcast information, we take it and feed it into the people that council as an organisation already uses, and so it gets added to the media the media assessment that we get on a monthly basis through our marketing and communications area. So we try to do that with major events where we receive the broadcast information, but we can commission a service to do an assessment purely of this event, which we've done a few times over the years, and then we get a bit of a benchmark of, okay, this is the level of media coverage we got for this event in this year, and that's how it converted to dollar value, and it gives us, without having to repeat it at a cost every year, it just gives us a bit of a benchmark, and then we can do comparisons from other events that have similar to reporting of media coverage. We probably haven't done that for a few years, so we can certainly do that. We could pick a couple of the events that we've got that had broadcast numbers, this Cadell, a couple of them across last summer, and do that and get a dollar conversion from that report.
Julie?
Well, I was actually going to say that I think going forward in the future, this whole COVID-19 thing has actually brought around people presenting or doing events in a very different way. And one of them is around global exposure, using things such as the internet. And I wouldn't be surprised going forward in the future where we will get more and more events come to us that perhaps are not going to have an immediate people or participation of our citizens, and not just in Geelong but in Victoria. but they will have a broader exposure for us, which we will then have to think about, well, what will that gain us in the future for in terms of our visitation? And it is something I think that's going to happen, that is going to happen going forward. Even some of our traditional events that we have that have currently been holding maybe 50, 60, 70, 80, 90,000 people might not get people participate in that way, but might have an add-on where they're able to show that they are promoting the region out into the broader community. So it would be a good thing to do a piece of work around that, about having a value on, as Brett was saying, on whether it's television or whether it's, you know, not necessarily talking about Facebook, but somehow live streaming, and you actually add that to it.
Yeah, good point, Julie. All right. Sharon, what are we up to? The 49ers, NACRA.
Item 11, the 49er FX, which means the women's 49ers, and the NACRA 17 World Championships. This was delivered in February, so we had quite a busy period where we had the Festival of Sales, and then the next weekend we had Cadell. The next weekend we had golf, then the NACRA and 49er World Championships, and then followed a week later by the Ironman event. So the World Championships were a huge success. Again, this one of the things that assisted greatly was that this particular World Championship was held, so we had the 2020 World Championship. The 2019 World Championship was in New Zealand in December on purpose, obviously, so that those people from the other hemispheres, from the other side of the world, only had to travel to the Southern Hemisphere once. So what we saw was all of the equipment, and many of the crews literally came direct from New Zealand straight to here late December, and so they participated in Festival of Sales and the Australian Championships and the Oceania Championships in a nice lead up to the World Championships. So there was a wonderful economic boost there. You can see in the assessment that it talks about a large proportion of the participants said that they stayed in paid accommodation for up to 35 nights. So, you know, this is just perfect storm. Everything came together with that event being in New Zealand. So the economic benefit for this was extraordinarily high, because we had such a long extended stay that initially we weren't expecting, and the economic benefit was in fact way exceeded the assessment that we did initially when the event was supported during the bid phase with the Yacht Club.
Yep. All right. Any okay, we'll keep moving then. The Ironman.
Yes, Baker Institute Ironman. It was a week later in 2020. That was to assist with the facilitation of the NACRA and the 49er World Championships. So Ironman went to the third weekend of February this year. Another successful event. Excuse me. It attracted over 2,000 participants, and Ironman, every Ironman participant completes data surveys for Ironman, identifying what their average spend is and how many spectators they brought with them, etc. So based on those figures, it indicated that there was 2 spectators to every participant, so in excess of 4,500 spectators. It was, personally, I attended the event this year. I attend most events, but I attended the event for a significant part of the day this year, and the numbers were the general activity and engagement and community that was around the finish for the age groupers was extraordinarily high. It was probably the biggest crowd that I had seen at Ironman for quite some years. So it certainly has had a resurgence. This year, as we know, the Ironman 70.3. It's the only Ironman, was the only Ironman 70.3 in Victoria. This committee is very familiar with the discussion had with Ironman. We, as you know, there's an Ironman 70.3 Melbourne. That was November, I think, start of November or October, I think, was around the time frame. Not sure where that sits at this point in time. However, we know that there'll be a second one in the market for the 2020-21 summer. So we'll see what the outcome of or the impacts of a second one in the Victorian market have on next year's event.
Thanks, Sharon. The Tennis International.
The Geelong Tennis International, as the committee is aware, this event fell into our laps quite quickly. This year it came about as a result of the devastating bushfires that happened in other areas of Victoria where this event was meant to be staged and unfortunately couldn't be held in the city, in the town that it was bid for. So Geelong had an opportunity to pick that up and run with it quite quickly, which they did. The event started on Monday the 9th of March and was due to finish on Sunday the 15th of March. This was the weekend that COVID exploded for us here in Victoria. The event was delivered Monday to Thursday, and on Friday they made the decision to cancel the event and they couldn't continue through the weekend. That was the weekend that the mass gathering restrictions came into place, and they couldn't be confident that they would be able to adhere to those restrictions, so they decided to cancel the event partway through. It acknowledges, as I discussed when introducing the item, the budget item, for those events that were recommended to still receive their sponsorship, even if their event was only partially delivered or not delivered at all as a result of COVID, literally the night before or in the days leading up to their event. This was one of those events. The initial assessment for the event was that it would return about $800,000. About $800,000 return on investment for us as an economic benefit assessment, and the assessment is that it sits at 174 based on the fact that they didn't get to deliver the biggest days, or the bigger, the two or three biggest days of their event. However, they still spent their entire event budget, and there was still the streaming broadcast, parts of the streaming broadcast, and the brand and reputation benefits were still provided to the city by the fact that we had the event, and those participants came for the first half of the event. The Geelong Lawn Tennis Club felt that the event, notwithstanding the COVID impacts and the cancellation, which was beyond their control, still felt that it was a great event for them. It was live streamed. They received great feedback from the participants and from those who watched it through the live stream, and have interest in potentially bidding to secure this event with a much longer time frame, much longer lead time in the future.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Russell.
I was surprised, given the quality of players. There were guys that were ranked 350 and, quite high rankings, how high the standard was of play of those players. And because they're the guys that are desperately trying to get on to the world tour. And I think in the long term, if we could secure and the event ran, we could, develop a very good tennis outcome for the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, good comment, Russell. Good comment. Okay, we'll move on to the head of schoolgirls, the rowing.
Item 14, head of the schoolgirls. Head of the schoolgirls, again, were one of those events that was impacted by COVID this year. The event started on the Friday. As you know, it's expanded to a 3-day event in recent years. They started their event on Friday afternoon, and they made the decision to cancel on Friday afternoon after the National Cabinet introduced the restriction on mass gathering. They felt that they shouldn't deliver their event across that weekend. So they continued through the Friday. They wanted to give all of the schoolgirls the opportunity to participate in one race. So they continued throughout Friday until every participant had at least got their oars in the water and rode a race. And then they finished up on the Friday night and didn't continue throughout the weekend. However, as all of those participants had already paid for their accommodation, they were already in situ in their accommodation. Discussions with the head of the Schoolgirls Committee since that time, they've advised us that many of the participants continued to stay for the weekend. They didn't rush home. They still stayed the Friday night. Many stayed the Saturday night. Often the schools and the clubs have dinners arranged on Saturday night or get-togethers and things on Saturday night, and apparently most of them still had those in restaurants and the like throughout Geelong on the Saturday night. So the economic benefit, whilst it's not as high as it would normally be, which would be 2 million plus, high 2 millions for economic benefit, we still indicated that the assessment is that it's still close to $1 million in economic benefit for the region, even with the event cancelling on the Friday night.
Thanks. The Highland Gathering?
Highland Gathering, similar position. Unfortunately, the Highland Gathering, they had a urgent committee meeting on the Friday and made the decision to cancel their event. We believe there were some of the intrastate and interstate pipe bands, etc. Some of the interstate and international judges were already in Geelong and already staying in paid accommodation. So there was a little bit, a couple of nights accommodation that we had from a small percentage. Unfortunately, as an event, they still had incurred all of their costs, all of their budget, without any gate, obviously without any income being gate takings or site costs from any of the food operators. So as an event, the return, the economic benefit is quite low because the bulk of the spectators, all of the spectators, are day trippers. If they're not participants in the event, are day trippers or locals, and they wouldn't have come down because the event was widely promoted that it was cancelled. So whilst a very small return on investment, as an event, as an event organiser, we know that they fully incurred their costs, and it would be a significant impact on this committee were they not to receive that funding, having spent all that they were going to spend on that event that didn't go ahead.
Okay. The last one, the Lasers Masters.
The Laser Master World Championships. So the Laser Masters World Championships and the Laser Masters Australian and Oceania Championship, which is how the Yacht Club decided to provide us with a post-event report that bridged the World Championships and the Oceania Championships together. Technically, we were only sponsoring the World Championships. However, because the Oceania Championships were the week prior and led into the World Championships, this is following the weekend where those restrictions came into play. The Yacht Club continued with the Oceania Championships, and it was still unknown as to whether the Laser Masters could go ahead, the World Championships could go ahead. However, all of the participants for the World Championships were already here, already in town, and the majority of them then chose to participate in the Australian and the Oceania Championships to ensure that they could get some races in since they were here and not knowing if the Worlds were going to go ahead. So in fact, it's felt that whilst it might have been a day or two short, predominantly all of the participants that were expected to be here for the Worlds were here for the lead-up, participated in not so much the World Championship, but certainly the Australian and the Oceania Championships, and did most of the things they would have done during the World Championships anyway, just leaving a few days earlier than originally planned. So the economic benefit, whilst it's smaller, original assessment pre-assessment when we were supporting the Yacht Club in their bid for that was we thought it would be about a $2.5 million economic benefit, though estimations based on the data provided by the Yacht Club says that we're still just under $1 million, about 800,000 economic benefit from that event, based on the majority of participants were already here way before the COVID impact happened.
Yeah. All right. There's nothing else, so we'll move.
We just need to move and second those.
Yeah.
Details.
We can move and second on mass now, Sharon.
We can.
So the recommendation is that the Geelong Major Events accepts the event organisers' final reports and the GME post-event evaluations and notes the officers' comments. Need a mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved Russell and seconded Ron. Thank you. Now, we had... Sorry, you're on in favour. Yes, hands. I thought you were waving at me, Lee and Julia. Sorry about that. Now, Sharon, I pick up from the discussions at the strategic meeting last time in relation to no further decisions being made in relation to GMA funding until further notice. Does everyone recall that conversation we had? Well, we just need a mover and a seconder for that now. So, have you got Sharon? Have you got proper wording for that?
Sure. So the discussion previously was that the committee did not feel appropriate to make decisions on any funding applications until July, or when there was further clarification about the likely return of large gatherings to enable major events to continue. So if there's a request from the committee to move such a motion, that motion could be that in response to the impacts to GMA supported major events from the COVID-19 pandemic, that Geelong Major Events suspends any new funding decisions until further notice, or words to that effect, unless somebody would like to put a more specific time frame around it.
For mine, I'm happy with until further notice, or until there's greater clarification around the potential of returning to large-scale events.
So have you got that, Sharon?
Yep.
So you want to just read that motion out then? Julie, yeah.
Sorry. In response to the impacts of COVID-19, of the COVID-19 pandemic, that the Geelong Major Event Committee suspend any new funding decisions until further clarification regarding the lifting of restrictions on major events. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Or can we just say for the foreseeable future, because we don't know what the timeline is. Julie, what were you going to add? Sorry.
Yeah, Julie.
All I was going to say was, I think I'm got to be a bit careful. We might actually, remember we're going back again to, somebody might come to us. Well, let's think of the cricket, for example. They might come and say, cricket's going to be back, but it's going to be to an empty stadium. Will you support it? So there's a...
yeah, fair point.
So that you know, there could be a situation like that. You know, we would think, well, yeah, we would actually support something like that, because we would guess that we would get out of that some big promotion to actually come and visit our region. So I think we've got to be really careful that if it's ones that rely on mass gatherings, then obviously we can't make any decision on that. Or maybe it is that we just look at the time frame for 2020 and not beyond 2020. I don't know.
The next decision-making meeting is July. Anyway, we just wait and see what the agenda delivers.
So maybe we don't need to have a motion at all. Just see what happens.
Yeah, that really raises, because we're making that decision with the information we had at the time. So, you know, if the next decision-making meeting is July, we probably don't need a motion to any of that effect.
Yeah, well, don't clutter the system.
Dire a month ago.
Yeah, and that's what the information we had at the time. You know.
Yeah.
The trials, the car trials.
Revival,
yeah. What information have we given to Nick Heath on that?
The decision at the March meeting was to defer the application until the committee, till we had confirmation that the event could continue in its full delivery mode. And that's been communicated to the event organizer. The event organizer is in the position now where they're planning for an event moving forward in November, sorry, the event's in November, but currently they're planning for their November event. And obviously there'll be a point in time moving forward that they'll have to make a decision if restrictions to have mass gatherings haven't been lifted. But they're not at that point now. There's still light at the end.
So just taking up on what Lee and Brett have said, we might not need that motion, and we just leave it until the July strategic meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter, it's Brett. Like I said, I've had to turn off my video. I'm having difficulty with my audio coming through with the video. But yeah, I'd support that too. I think we judge each application on its merits at the time with the information that we have. And I think you're right that we perhaps don't need a motion at this stage. I think as a committee, we can continue to reassess the situation and make judgment when applications come before us.
Yeah.
Okay. It seems like everyone seems to be nodding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Mr. Chair, if I may, Brett, we need to acknowledge that you're absent from the meeting if we can't see you.
I'm happy to put my video back on, but I struggle with hearing, that's all.
Okay, I'm just letting you know.
We're back, so we're all back. So you got that covered, Sharon, that last conversation?
Yeah, but we're not doing anything.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So nothing else? Any general business? Russell?
The last meeting, how was I marked? Absent or an apology? Because I was on the operating table about the time when the meeting was on.
You were absent.
Okay.
You were
all right.
at the last meeting.
Yep.
All right, unless there's nothing further, I think we're done, Sharon. All right, we'll close the meeting at 5:15, and thanks everyone for the attendance. We'll wave to everybody. Thank you.